Julia, let's go from here. Mom, I'm 17 now. You didn't have to come. I don't want to hear it, Julia. Mom, I have to go to the bathroom. Julia, you stay here. I'll be right back. Richie, are you done? No. Oh, it's my time to go. Julia? Julia? Julia! 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 I know it was him. He's been after my daughter. It wasn't me. You liar. You know where my daughter is. What did you do to her? Mrs. Halen, I love Julia. I could never harm her. Don't take my daughter's name with your mouth. Officers, I really don't know. Julia and I planned to meet at the carnival, but her mother came along, and when I went to look for her, she wasn't there anymore. Neither her mother nor Ethan knew what happened. But the police knew what was really going on. Every year, one person vanishes from the small town of Oak Grove on the night of Halloween. And this is how it has been for the past 7 years. There is no explanation to how it happens, or even any clue. No bodies were ever discovered, nor were any traces found. And this year, it was 17-year-old Julia Halen. The BIIPD led a search around town, but found no lead whatsoever, just as the years before. Most of these cases were often of teenagers around the age 15 to 17. And the most logical conclusion the police came to was that they must have run away. Besides, the cases being that of only one person a year, the department didn't give the incident too much significance and eventually put off the search. Like many others, Julia Halen was never found. It has been a year since Ethan last saw his girlfriend Julia, but he has never been able to forget her. Her mother blames him, but he knows there has to be something more to her disappearance. If she were to run away, as the police claim, she would have ran away with him. Ethan knew Julia didn't run away. Something must have happened to her that night. And now, Ethan has joined the law enforcement. He is an officer himself and is determined to get to the bottom of this. After joining the department, Ethan was surprised to discover Julia wasn't the only person. But every Halloween, someone vanishes in Oak Grove. And out of all these incidents, About 5 years ago, one girl, Lisa Collins, claimed she was taken by a mysterious man. However, at the time, no one believed her. Lisa Collins still lived in Oak Grove, now married with children herself. Investigating the strange case, Ethan went to visit her. Tell me what happened that night. I was 15. Like every year, I went to the annual Halloween Carnival, and I saw a man wearing a scarecrow mask, showing some tricks with his cards. Like everyone else I went to watch, I was amazed by his illusions. But I don't know what happened after that. I started to feel strange. Oh, it's time to go. And the next thing I realized, I was walking in the woods by the railroad, following the man with the scarecrow mask. But that night, I happened to step on something, and when I injured my feet, I came to my senses. I was afraid. I didn't know how I got there or where I was, or who was that man. All I could think of was running. And that's what I did. After hearing out the woman's story, Ethan went to the woods by the railroad and inspected the area. But there was nothing there that could indicate anything. It was deserted. No one came here, and there was no sign of anyone having been here. The only way I'll find out is all the night. This year, Ethan has managed to convince a few of his buddies, who are fellow officers, to help him solve this case, to find out what happened with Julia. On the night of Halloween, they posted themselves around the carnival. Ethan had done background checks on each and every vendor that had opened stalls, circling an open area by the woods. As always, there were some local vendors and some vendors who had come from out of town. That's my costume. Your costume? This is my town, and I'm the only Joker here. We'll see about that. As the Jokers began to bicker, people began to huddle around to watch the show. How do you know if a vampire has a cold? It's always coughing. That was stupid. I'll tell you guys. Who did Frankenstein go trick-or-treating with? His ghoul friend. That wasn't funny, punk. Stop trying to take the spotlight. Tonight is my night. Let the people choose who they like better, loser. Who you calling a loser? As the fight got intense, everyone cheered them on. Ethan scanned the area, looking at the other stalls. Suddenly, there was a scream from the crowds. Where's my daughter? My daughter! Emily! Emily! Ethan rushed to search for the woman, realizing what had happened. Inspect the entire carnival. A girl has gone missing. Ethan yelled into his radio, alerting the others, before he ran to his bike and drove towards the woods. Reaching there, everything was dark and quiet. but Ethan got off and continued on foot towards the railroad. "Where are you?" Shining his flashlight in each and every direction, Ethan suddenly heard a rustle. Turning around, he noticed a man in a bunny mask walking off as the girl followed him. Ethan yelled out, "Hey, stop! Stop! Put your hands up!" As Ethan ran towards them, the man with the bunny mask turned around and stood still. Ethan cautiously neared him. "Let the girl go." Suddenly, the man chuckled. Before he took out a gun.
Bye-bye.
Ethan stood at gunpoint, trying to think of a way out, but it seemed it was too late. With the trigger came out bubbles, but as Ethan was caught off guard, a real bullet fired and pierced through his shoulder. As the gunshot rang in the air, the girl stumbled back, coming to her senses. "Where am I? What is happening?" She was horrified seeing Ethan fall to the ground, bleeding out. "Run!" Ethan yelled at her. But as she escaped from there, the man with the bunny mask walked towards Ethan.
Time's over, time's over, time's over.
As the man with the bunny mask held the gun at his forehead, Ethan knew it was now or never. Fighting through the pain, he lifted a rock with his hand and hit him on his head, knocking him out. Struggling to get up, Ethan went to him. "Now your game is over." He took hold of the mask and pulled it off. But upon seeing the person behind it, he couldn't believe. Julia? Almost 20 years ago, there was a circus in Oak Grove that was run by ringmaster Thomas Lockhart. The circus was very popular, especially for its young crew and the dangerous stunts they performed. And Lockhart himself was known for his amazing performances with lions and tigers. Lockhart would train his young performers, all around the ages of 13 to 17, but he was very strict, and sometimes even abusive. "Go! Walk along the line! What are you waiting for?" I'm scared. I don't have all night. If you fall, you're minced meat. Now go!" "Please, Mr. Lockhart, just one more minute. Just one more minute. I'll throw you in the cage myself." "Mr. Lockhart!" It was one evening when Mr. Lockhart was training one of his workers, Isabella, to perform a dangerous stunt. Another one of his workers, Oliver, was watching them. He could see how scared Isabella was to perform with wild beasts. Oliver was a great performer himself, and deep down inside, he was in love with Isabella. And when he saw Lockhart mistreating her, he couldn't take it. But what was there he could possibly do? But it was on another night. Oliver got his opportunity. While Lockhart was feeding the lions, Oliver went on the excuse of helping him and threw him inside the cage. "What are you doing? Let me get out of here and see what I do." Ignoring all of Lockhart's curses, Oliver removed the buckets of food and left him in the cage with the hungry beasts. After the death of Thomas Lockhart, the circus shut down and all his workers left to make their own living elsewhere. Oliver and Isabella stayed in town and got by doing odd jobs. And eventually they got married. Life was beautiful for them. And soon they had a son, Kevin. But it was the year when Kevin turned 10, and Oliver and Isabella brought him to the Halloween Carnival. Something strange happened. The couple saw a man dressed in a similar costume as Lockhart, wearing the same jackal mask he used to. "Doesn't he look like..." "Don't take his name. Let's go, Kevin." Oliver took Kevin around to all the games and stalls. But Kevin couldn't forget the trick the man in the jackal mask was showing. And just when his parents were occupied, he secretly went to the jackal man to see his performance. "Wow, you look just like your dad." The man took out a coin out of his pocket and threw it at him. When Kevin caught it, the man chuckled. "And you have your mother's reflexes." That night, the man took Kevin with him, and that was the beginning of these strange happenings. Staring at his girlfriend laying lifeless, Kevin was in shock. It was her the whole time? She was doing this? She was abducting all these teens? No. How can this be? This doesn't make any sense. Where was she all this time? That year, no one went missing from Oak Grove. But Ethan still wonders what happened, and if this strange happening would ever happen again.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. "911 operator, what's your emergency?" "I need medical assistance as soon as possible. My sister, she's fallen tremendously sick. She needs to get to the hospital immediately." "All right, miss. Can you please describe to me her condition? What seems to be the problem?" "Please, send an ambulance quickly. I can feel her heartbeat, but she's not responding to me." "Can I have your name and address?" "My name is Evanora Carrington, and my sister, Cordelia Carrington. We live in Acreville, down Oak Hill Drive. All right, miss, help will be on the way. It was on one chilly night in Montgomery, Alabama, that the police received an emergency call from a woman named Eva Nora Carrington, seeking medical assistance for her sick sister. The dispatcher immediately called for the first responders to report to the location. However, the team was a little surprised at how the address given by the woman was practically in the middle of nowhere. The dispatcher checked the location, and sure enough, the address was legitimate and a few people even lived around the area. But it was majorly deserted, tucked away into the forest near the small town of Acreville that was about an hour's drive away. Are you serious? This is literally in the middle of the forest. Do people even live around there? We're obliged to check it out. It could be a matter of life or death. Come on, let's get going. So late at night, around 12 a.m., an ambulance was sent with a driver and 2 emergency medical technicians. The ride through the lonely highway went by very quickly as the ambulance drove at full speed. However, as they neared Acreville, they found themselves driving through narrow, twisted, and curved roads. It was after much difficulty, only being able to see with the ambulance headlights, that the crew reached the small cabin house. When they got there, they saw a woman rush out the door with teary red eyes. "It's too late," she said in a low voice as she escorted the crew inside. EMT Jessica Connor and her assistant James Walker examined the patient. They were quite surprised to see the similarity in the 2 sisters. They were almost identical. When did this happen? Some time back. There was nothing I could do. You see, we live so far from town, I couldn't have possibly taken her anywhere like this. Jessica and James were a little intrigued at all the herbal medicines that were placed on the bedside table. They had never seen medicines of such sort, and were a little doubtful of the cause of the individual's death. "Miss Carrington, was your sister suffering from sickness, or was this a sudden demise?" "I don't know what happened. She suddenly fell sick, after which she didn't show signs of recovering." Jessica ushered James to the side. "This looks like a police case. We'll have to send the body to the forensic morgue to know the actual cause of death. This doesn't seem natural." Miss Eva Nora Carrington was informed that there would be a procedure before she would be able to perform the funeral of her sister. Together, the crew shifted the cadaver into the ambulance while Eva Nora shut off the lights and locked the cabin. The area had become quite dark except for the light of the ambulance. James sat in the front with the driver, while Eva Nora insisted she sit in the back by her sister and Jessica. It wasn't long before the crew was set to get going again. However, strange as it was, getting the ambulance off the dirt path and onto the road turned out to be a big issue. It almost seemed as if the engine wasn't able to exert enough power to pull the van up. "What's the issue, Lucas?" "I don't understand. Usually something like this happens when the vehicle is overloaded, but we're far from its full capacity." "Has it been damaged before?" "No, absolutely not. Emergency vehicles are inspected every day. There's no way an issue could have gone overlooked." "Well, we reached here just fine. What happened all of a sudden?" When some time had gone by, the 2 men decided to push the van up while Jessica controlled the steering. After much struggle, they were finally able to start their journey back to the hospital. That was strange. In all my years of working and traveling in ambulances, this is the first time something like this has happened. Emergency vehicles rarely malfunction. It's always prepared to get to the destination as fast as possible. If only help would have arrived a little earlier for Cordelia, Eva Nora said, brushing her hand along her sister's. "I'm sorry for what has happened. Was she your twin sister? You two look quite similar." "No, she was my elder sister. She took care of me, and I've let her down." "No, don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault." "Right, it was yours," Eva Nora said in a stern, low voice. Jessica suddenly felt a little awkward and nervous seeing Evanora hold on to Cordelia's lifeless hand. Sometimes, fate just doesn't go our way. Suddenly, everyone heard a loud noise from the ambulance. Jessica peered to the front to check out the matter. What's wrong? Is everything okay? Something's wrong with the van. We've been driving at a really low speed. I just hope the tires bear with us until we get to the hospital. They look like they were going to burst. They couldn't support the weight. What are you talking about? We only have 2 more people than we did before, and those women don't look heavy to me at all. James looked outside. He could hear the engine overpowering as Lucas pressed on the accelerator. As he leaned back in his seat, something suddenly hit the windshield in front of him. Lucas immediately pressed the brakes as the men stared at a bat that flew straight onto the ambulance. It fell on the ground before it flew off again. This is truly one strange night. I'm getting the creeps. This forest must be infested with bats and birds of all kinds. What is going on? Have you and your sister grown up here, surrounded by all this nature? Yes, we have. Our mother taught us many things about this wilderness. It's nothing but beautiful here. We used to catch bats and keep them in our rooms. They were our pets. Jessica looked at Evanora. This girl was serious? This wasn't a joke? You two must have been adventurous. Of course, my sister and I know these forests in and out. James suddenly sat up in his seat to a strange noise outside. It sounded like the hooting of owls, not one, but many. Lucas suddenly squinted his eyes to a figure that appeared up ahead. What is that thing? As the ambulance neared the figure, James and Lucas stared at a dark black deer gallop across the road upon spotting them. A black deer is rare. You think it's a sign? Bogus. You don't believe in that stuff, do you? How many times have we had to stop the van? It's like everything's working against us. No, we'll be there in no time, James said, just when the ambulance took another bumping shake. And darn this thing, it's like we've gotten nowhere. We're far from reaching the city. The men suddenly noticed smoke seeping out from the hood of the van. And now we're not going to make it at all. And soon enough, the noises the ambulance had been making reached its peak before it stopped for good right in the middle of the road. Lucas tried starting the ambulance up again, but it was of no use. What's wrong, James? The ambulance isn't starting. Can we call for backup? Nope, nothing is working. We're cut off. There's no network. Maybe I can try jump-starting the vehicle. All right, I'll go with you. As James and Lucas tried to inspect the vehicle, Jessica and Evanora waited in the back. You don't want to step out for some fresh air? That's all right. I'll be better off inside. There might be wild animals out here at this time. Wild animals? I don't think so. There are more than just wild animals, Evanora said, letting out a chuckle. What do you mean? Jessica asked, confused, seeing the smirk on Evanora's face. Jessica suddenly heard something shift. It wasn't her, and it wasn't Evanora. She was paralyzed in fear, seeing the cadaver that she herself had examined move in its place. She stood up and paced back, her eyes wide in horror as she watched. As she watched Cordelia sit up. We aren't quite as wild as you may suppose. We're vicious, darling. Evanora, how wonderfully you pulled off the plan today. I'm proud of you. Thank you, sister. James and Lucas suddenly heard a scream from inside the ambulance. They hurried to the back and opened the doors, horrified to see not 2, but 3 women. Plan? What? How can this be possible? I checked her pulse, her heartbeat, Jessica said, trembling. Lucas took hold of the equipment near him. Get out of the van, or we won't hesitate to use this. Cordelia chuckled. Are you threatening me after I showed you the greatest spell of all times? Sister, the others are waiting eagerly to come out. Even Nora put her finger to her mouth and whistled. Everyone gulped as they waited for the worst. James and Lucas stood still to the sound of rustling leaves in the trees that surrounded them. In seconds, the ambulance took a jolting shake as 2 figures jumped out of the darkness, and on top of it, the crew was horrified to see 2 other women that looked similar to Eva Nora and Cordelia. They laughed menacingly. Looks like the trip was worth it, sisters. We've got 3 for the price of 1. Over here! How could they drive the ambulance here? It's like the van was picked up and dropped in the middle of this forest. This is so strange. Officer Pete, we have to call for more backup. We found the crew. They're no more. After receiving an emergency call, 911 dispatchers sent a crew of first responders to a home in Acreville. However, when the crew failed to return, police went out to search for them. They were bewildered when they found out that there was no home at the location that they had gone to. But what there was remaining was an old, broken-down, abandoned cabin in the middle of the forest. Nearly 45 days following their disappearance, numerous questions are now arising as the police discover the lost ambulance in the vast woods that stretch in the area, and its passengers, in a horrible condition, further out. How did the vehicle get there? And who or what could have been responsible of the demise of our fellow community workers? This is BII News, Montgomery, Alabama. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
Mom? Mom? Who are you? Are you lost? Come here. No! The Wilsons, Robert, Joanne, and their 9-year-old son Jamie, recently moved to the small town of Moretas in Brazil. From Florida, when Mr. Wilson was transferred here on the job. Robert worked for a company which was supplying produce from Brazil to the US, and he was to be a representative here. Though the language and culture was unfamiliar, Robert managed to speak broken Portuguese, while Joanne and Jamie struggled to cope with the new environment. Nonetheless, when Jamie enrolled into the local school and Joanne was introduced with the neighboring families, they quickly fit in. So how are things going? You must be having trouble getting around. It's been a little tough, but just learning a few Portuguese words have been a lifesaver. How about Jamie? It's been nice for him too. In all this nature, he loves playing out in the woods. The woods? No, don't let Jamie go out into the woods. None of us allow our children here. There's a creepy old lady that lives in these forests. People call her Bruja Velha, evil witch. They say she snatches children and eats them. Some years ago, a boy went missing in town, and he was never found. They say it was her. What? Haven't people gone to the police? Even the police are scared of her. They have these superstitions. If they arrest her, their families would be harmed. And besides, they don't have any strong evidence. Hearing about the strange old woman, Joanne was shocked and a bit frightened too. Mom, can I go play with my friends? Alright, Jamie, but listen to me carefully. Never go out into the forest. Either play on the field with other kids or in front of the house, alright? Okay, Mom. After moving here, Jamie had been having a hard time with everything, but ever since he joined school and made a handful of friends, things had been better. After school, he rushed to the field nearby to play. When he got there, he found all the boys huddled together, whispering something. Come on, let's go scare the Bruja Velha. What's a Bruja Velha? She's a creepy old lady who lives in the woods. Is that why Mom told me not to play there? Are you guys actually going there? Why? You too scared to go? Chicken! No, I'm not a chicken. Then you go first. Put on the spot, Jamie reluctantly gathered up the courage and led the boys into the forest. After a small walk, they reached the hut, tucked away in the vines and trees. There she is. Seeing the old woman sleeping on her cot, the boys gathered a few pebbles and threw them at her. The old woman got up shocked and immediately stared out the window. You boys, hold on. I'm going to cook you and eat you. Hearing the old woman, the boys all shouted, "Run!" But just as his friends all sprinted away, Jamie too followed. But soon, tripped over a root and fell. As he sat up, bearing the pain from his bruised knee, he saw the old woman walking towards him. No, let me go. Seeing Jamie cry, the old woman got him up, brought him inside the hut. Locking the door, she brought him to the table before hanging a kettle of water over the fire. Jamie trembled as he watched her get some herbs and throw them in. What are you going to do to me? Are you going to make me into soup? Please don't eat me. The old woman looked at Jamie and chuckled. She brought over the hot water, soaked the towel in it, and sat down beside him. Please, Bruja, please, no, don't. To Jamie's surprise, the old woman rather gently cleaned his bruise and took out some bandages from an old chest. Does it hurt? It does. This is lavender and rosemary. It'll help with the pain. Smells nice. After dressing the wound, the old woman heated up a bowl of soup and watched Jamie eat. Do you like it? The bread is hard. This old woman can't grind her barley like the old days. Finally, when Jamie was full and happy, she took him out into the woods and showed him the way back. Go straight and you'll be home. As soon as Jamie returned home, Joanne noticed the bandage on his knee. Jamie, what happened? I slipped and fell. You have to be more careful. Come on, let me check it. Slipping the white lie, Jamie followed his mother inside. He knew she would probably be very mad and he didn't want to get into trouble. That night, Jamie placed a sprig of lavender the old woman had given him under his pillow and went to sleep. The next day, when he got to school, his friends all gathered around him shocked. You're okay? What happened back there? We thought the Bruja Velha caught you. No, I got out of there. The boys never dared to go into the woods again. But it was a couple weeks later, one day, when Jamie returned home, he found the house filled with the aroma of freshly baked rye bread and remembered the old woman again. Gotta go, Mom. Jamie, be home on time. Jamie rushed off with the loaves of soft bread. He would give this to the old woman. He happily skipped his way through the forest, spotting her little hut. He creaked open the door to find her sleeping in her cot again. Bruja? It had been an hour past 5, and Jamie hadn't returned home. Joanne was worried sick. She immediately called Robert, and the parents went out searching. Did you kids see Jamie? No, he didn't come to play with us today. What? Then where could he go? The parents were struck in panic and anxiety. The whole evening passed, and there was no news of their little boy. Rob, what are we going to do? Where could he have gone? But just as Joanne broke down crying, the parents suddenly heard the front gate creak open. There in the front yard was Jamie. Jamie, where were you? You had us so scared. I got a little lost in the forest. What? Jamie, I told you never to go in these forests. Something horrible could have happened. I'm sorry. No, a sorry won't do it, Jamie. You're not allowed to go out on your own again. That night, Joanne put Jamie to bed, and she and Rob finally got some shut-eye. But it was as she dozed off, she saw Jamie. Mom, please help me. Jamie, don't move. Don't go any further. Jamie! Waking up from that awful nightmare, Joanne immediately ran to Jamie's room. Relieved when she saw her boy sound asleep. next day, when Jamie returned from school, he put away his shoes and bag and then simply stayed in his room reading and drawing. Wow, he's never been this well behaved. Probably trying to make it up, so I let him go play on the field again. When a few days went by like this, Joanne thought she let Jamie out. Jamie, don't you want to go play with your friends? No. What? Why not? I don't like them anymore. Joanne was quite surprised by Jamie's reluctance. Had they gotten into a fight? Jamie would never choose staying at home over playing out. But from that day on, it seemed Jamie would always keep to his room, fiddling around with his toys by himself. It was one day, she thought if she took him herself, the kids would patch up. But that day, when she watched her boy join the others for a game of football, she was surprised seeing Jamie play so well. He had never been the athletic kind. He barely had good balance, always tripping and bruising himself. Goal! But that wasn't the only unusual thing she noticed in Jamie. Jamie, have your mango smoothie. Mangoes and milk? I don't want to have this. You love having this. No, mangoes and milk are poisonous. What? Seeing Jamie run off to his room, Joanne was more than bewildered. You won't believe what happened. Jamie said mangoes and milk are poisonous. Oh, I heard that too. The locals here have this strange superstition with their mangoes. Oh, so that's what it is. Jamie had been coping quite well in Brazil. He didn't seem to be having any issues anymore. In fact, one evening, she noticed Jamie watching a Portuguese show. He understands it? And then one day, she found him writing Portuguese in his notebook. Jamie, where did you learn to write Portuguese? Are they teaching you in school? No. Did you learn from your friends? Sometimes we speak Portuguese. Wow, can you teach me? No. Can I go to my room? Joanne stood shocked as Jamie got up and left, almost irritated by her. As the days went by, she couldn't help but notice a strange change in him. All day he kept to himself in the corner of his room, reading or drawing, never going out to play, never even talking with her. Joanne felt as if she were with a stranger. What happened to Jamie? He was never like this before. They used to spend so much time together. He was happy and cheerful. I don't understand, Rob. It feels like he's not my son, but someone else. What are you saying? Of course he's your son. He's growing up, adjusting to the new culture, new friends. But when things went on like this, Joanne got a strange feeling something wasn't right. It was one afternoon while she was out in the market. She spotted one of Jamie's friends. Ronnie, you and Jamie are good friends, right? Yes, Miss Wilson. Did something happen between you guys and Jamie? The look on the boy's face changed before he stuttered. It was that day. We went to prank the bruja and she came chasing after us, so we ran. But Jamie fell. We thought she got hold of him. Joanne remembered the evening Jamie had returned with a bruised knee. He had lied to her. But more than that, knowing her son might have fallen into the hands of the old woman, Joanne didn't know how to feel. Was this why Jamie had been behaving so strange? Had that woman done something to him? When Joanne reached home that day, she saw her neighbor Marie passing by. "Marie, I was wondering, what you told me about that bruja, is there any truth to it?" "Well, just 2 houses down, the Alvarez's son went missing some years back. They tried everything to find him. The boys said he had gone into the forest. Police searched everywhere, but it was as if Reggie had vanished." Learning about Reggie, Joanne became anxious and stressed, remembering the day they had almost lost Jamie. "I got a little lost in the forest." As she pondered on everything that happened, all she could think of was that woman. She must have something to do with it. Unable to hold in her anxiety and fear, the next day, Joanne decided she would confront her herself. It was raining, but she went out into the forest and soon found the old woman's hut. Knocking on the door, Joanne found it open. She cautiously stepped inside. Looking around, the place was a mess. Far to the corner, on the cot, the old woman lay asleep. Joanne tried to make some noise, but the woman didn't move. So she walked up to her, calling her. She didn't reply. Joanne pulled her back. Horrified by what she saw, the old woman lay there, nothing remaining of her body except her shriveled skin against her bones. She's no more. Living all alone out in these woods, isolated and outcasted by everyone, the old woman had passed away without anyone even knowing. Frightened by what she saw, Joanne rushed out, returning home. If this old woman had been dead all along, if she had nothing to do with it, then what happened to Jamie? Panting as she reached home, Joanne shut the door and took a breath of relief. The house was silent. Jamie was probably in his room. She went to check on him. But the minute she opened his door, she froze, seeing Jamie standing to the corner, drawing on the wall. "Isu Reggie. I am Reggie." It was about 3 years ago. Reggie was only 11 at the time. Every afternoon, he used to go out with his friends to play football. But it was one day, while the boys were playing in the woods, they happened to get into a fight. And one of them pushed Reggie. It was then that Reggie accidentally slipped and fell in a ditch, fatally hitting his head on a rock. Afraid and panicked, the kids promised never to tell anyone what happened and left Reggie there. And eventually, when Reggie was reported missing, they all lied. "We went into the forest. We saw the Bruja Velha come after us and we ran, but Reggie never returned." They blamed the old woman, and eventually the news spread in town. And when Reggie's body was never discovered, people began to assume she was behind it. She was a witch. She was evil. But the truth was far different. And the only person who knew the truth was Jamie. when he discovered the old woman's remains that day and ran off into the woods to fall into the same ditch Reggie lay for years. Is Jamie possessed with Reggie's spirit? Isu Reggie.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It will only be a week's stay, honey. I'll be back home faster than you know it. If I didn't have to worry about work here, I would have gone with you. A whole week in Las Vegas? You talk as if I'm going on vacation. It's a business trip, and as soon as I get the work done, I'm going to board a flight back to home sweet home. Oh, don't act like you're not gonna have a little fun while you're there. By the way, I changed your hotel booking to a closer one. Here's the receipt. I called up the hotel to find out if they had a pickup service, which unfortunately they don't. But they say they're quite popular in town, and any Uber or cab driver can drop you off there if you mention their name. What was wrong with the other one? It was much cheaper than this one. Dawn, people don't think about saving all the time. When you get there, you're gonna need some rest, and thanks to me, now you'll be able to. And remember to bring me a souvenir, okay? A box of patisserie chocolates, or maybe even a custom-made Elvis Presley jumpsuit? What are you going to do with the Elvis Presley jumpsuit? Oh no, that was supposed to be for you, to spice things up a bit. In your dreams, Lisa. Alright, I gotta go. I'm late already. The flight is at 12. Take care, okay? Donald White bid farewell to his wife before heading out to the airport. He was to catch a flight from Portland, Oregon to Las Vegas, Nevada. Luckily, at 11:30 p.m., the streets were empty, so the ride to the airport went by quick. It was almost 3 a.m. by the time Donald landed at the BII International Airport in Las Vegas. When he got outside, it was chilly and dark. The sun was to rise at 6 a.m., so there was still a few hours till morning. At this time of the night, there weren't many people except for those who were here to board a flight or had been dropped from one. Donald paced around the area with his luggage in search for a cab, but strange as it was, there weren't any around. There weren't even any security guards or street patrol to whom Donald could ask directions. After walking about 10 minutes down the road, Donald finally spotted a cab parked up ahead. At first, Donald assumed the man had dozed off. But when he called out to him, the man suddenly stood up and straightened his posture. "Are you taking any customers?" Without saying a word, the man just nodded his head, took out his keys, and unlocked the car. Donald was pretty exhausted. He didn't even bother putting his luggage in the trunk and simply plopped it onto the back seat before he himself sat down and closed the door. "Do you know where the Cool Breeze Hotel is? As far as I've heard, it shouldn't be too far from here. Can you please take me there?" In a low voice, the man clutched onto his steering and said, "Sure, sir. Right away, sir." Donald checked his wristwatch. It was 3:17 a.m. He felt awfully tired, and soon enough, he leaned his head onto the glass window and dozed off. When Donald woke up, he was a little worried that he had slept too long. Donald was surprised to see it was still dark out. He instinctively glanced at his watch when he noticed the strangest thing. He tapped on his wristwatch, trying to get the arrows moving again, but it seemed that it had stopped working. He shrugged, taking it off and putting it into his pocket as he took out his phone instead. But when he turned his phone on, he was even more bewildered to see there was no network. Looking out to the desert grounds around him, he knew this place was remote, but not having network was strange considering they shouldn't be too far from town. Donald tried to peer a glance at the driver as he asked, "Hey, do you know what time it is? I don't know why my wristwatch has stopped working." Looking straight on ahead, the man said, "I don't wear a watch, sir." "Well, you must have a clock in the car, don't you?" The man slowly lifted one hand off the steering and pointing to his dashboard. "I used to have a clock, but now I don't. I don't check the time anymore, sir." "You don't check the time? Well, you should. How do you get around?" "Just how we're getting there now, sir." I don't have network either. Is this the usual in this desert town? I haven't been here before, so I wouldn't know. But this is strange. Can you check if your phone has network? In the old days, people used to observe the skies to tell the time, sir. Donald raised his brow, peering a glance outside. Yeah. By the way, how long have I been sleeping?" "Don't worry, sir. It hasn't been long, sir." Donald leaned back, feeling a little uneasy, completely oblivious of where he was and what time it was. When some more time had gone by like this, Donald started to become anxious. He rolled down the glass to let in the breeze, but the night was eerily still. Donald looked at the skies. The clouds seemed to be moving past so fast. He could see the silhouettes of the cactus plants go by one after the other as the car drove on. The symbols painted on the road went by in a blur. It seemed that they were driving down this lonely highway desert road at a high speed, yet when he moved forward towards the open glass, he did not feel the slightest breeze. It felt as if everything flashed before his eyes, yet he was stuck in the same place for the longest time on an endless road. Bewildered and a little panicked, Donald asked the driver, "Mister, where are we? How long will it take?" "Just a little longer, sir." Donald rolled the windows back up in anxiety and leaned back, holding his head. But when some more time had gone by and there was no sign of the morning sun, nor had he felt that he had gotten anywhere, Donald asked the driver again, "Hey, it's been quite long, hasn't it? Why haven't we reached the hotel yet?" "We'll be there in a little while, sir." But a little while was never a little while, and Donald was getting fed up. He had been waiting for hours. "I thought you said we were almost there. Where are you taking me?" "I'm just heading to our destination, sir. It's just a little bit more, sir." "No, I've had enough. I need some fresh air. Stop the car." Donald held onto the handle, expecting the driver to halt, but it seemed as if he didn't hear Donald's words. "Excuse me, mister. I said stop the car." But the driver kept his hands on the steering, staring straight on ahead. Donald sat up, snapping his fingers. "Hey man, you don't hear me? Stop the car!" But when the driver continued being passive and didn't stop the car, Donald became frantic. What was going on? He grabbed onto the man's shoulders firmly and yelled, "Stop the car!" "It's not possible to stop the car now, sir." Donald, infuriated at this point, yelled out, "What nonsense are you saying?" That's when the man straightened his head, now face to face with Donald. Donald stumbled back onto his seat, horrified by this man's face that had neither eyes, nose, nor mouth. Donald immediately began twisting the handle, kicking and banging against the car door, till he finally managed to break it and jumped out onto the street. Though he injured himself, he got up and continued running as far away as he could from whatever he had seen until he fainted. Donald woke up in a hospital room. He turned to see his wife was sitting beside him. Lisa? Lisa jumped up seeing Donald had finally awoken. Worried, she asked, "Donald, are you okay? How did you get here? What happened to you?" How did I get where? Where am I? Where are we? What do you mean? You don't know where we are? You were supposed to land in Las Vegas. How did you end up in California? In the middle of the Mojave Desert? About 100 miles away from the airport? If it weren't for those men, I can't even imagine what could have happened to you. Some locals from the nearby town of Holloran Springs found you unconscious on the side of the highway. And not just you, but all your things, your luggage, everything with you. I just can't get my head wrapped around how you ended up there. If it were robbers or muggers, why would they leave your things? The doctors didn't find any major injury, except for a few cuts and bruises. Thank goodness. Those men brought you here to the hospital. You've been in a coma for the past 11 days. When you didn't contact me, I called the police. It took them 3 days to locate you. That's when I left everything and came here. I've been by your side waiting for you to wake for the past 8 days. What happened to you, Dawn? I don't know. What happened to me? Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. After finishing her studies on internal medicine, Dr. Laura McKay was recruited as a primary care physician at the BII hospital in Michigan. This was a small branch of the BII hospitals and was rather limited by its doctors and available treatment. But in only a few weeks of working here, Laura loved her job, the patients she dealt with, and even her colleagues. Some were polite, while others had to be tolerated. Like Dr. Claude McGregor, he had been like a mentor and a good friend since Laura started working. So how's everything going? I've kind of fallen into a little issue, Dr. McGregor, and I totally take responsibility of it, but if Dr. Atkin finds out, this will be awfully humiliating. Oh boy, if there's anything I know about Dr. Atkin, he doesn't take it easy on the newbies. What happened? One of my patients was supposed to undergo surgery tomorrow. Today his reports came in, and he took aspirin just 2 days prior, and it's compromised the timing of his surgery. And it's all on me because I'm the one who forgot to discuss the use of blood thinners with him. You mean all the preparations and arrangements have to be postponed till a few weeks? I don't know how I was so careless. It's alright, we're all human here, we forget. I'll talk to Dr. Atkin about it. Laura breathed out in relief, knowing at least there was someone to speak in her favor. A lot of the doctors around here had a good relationship with Dr. McGregor. He was much more understanding and considerate. As for Dr. Gerald Atkin, everyone, especially the newbies, knew not to get on his bad side. Dr. Atkin was the chief physician, responsible for managing the hospital's budget, recruiting and training physicians, etc. But more generally, Dr. Atkin was known for picking out the faults of his subordinates. Checking her clipboard, Laura returned to making rounds about her patients. Nancy, where is that patient from yesterday? Ronald Miller? He didn't have insurance. So what if he didn't have insurance? He needed immediate care. Dr. Laura, I think you haven't heard of Dr. Atkin's policy. You think we're here to treat every sick person that walks in the door? You send them right back out. But Dr. Atkin, what if it's a life or death situation? Unless you're going to pay for it, the only thing you give them is their death certificates the next morning. Ridiculous newcomers. Laura sighed as she watched the nurse fix up the empty bed. Life could be so difficult sometimes. She moved on to meet another patient. Her name was Anna Williams. She was a lovely, cheerful young woman. She was admitted after an accident in which she had broken many of her bones. Her journey here had been difficult, but she was improving. "How are you feeling, Anna?" "Better, Doc. All thanks to you. I was thinking, after the hip surgery, will it be possible for me to return to dancing?" "You love dancing, don't you? Ballet, right?" "Wow. You remembered? I've been doing ballet since I was a child." "Why wouldn't I remember? All my patients are special to me. I don't want to let you down, and at the same time, I don't want to give you false hope." "It's okay, Doc. I understand. It's just that it's been a dream. I guess dreams aren't meant to be real anyway." Laura felt heartbroken seeing the young woman so upset. She admired her for her strength through it all. "Don't say that. It's not the end. Perhaps we can try therapy. We'll find a way." After completing her rounds, Dr. Laura was called in by Dr. Atkin for a talk. "Yes, Dr. Atkin?" "Come in, Laura." Laura sat down in front of Dr. Atkin as he turned in his chair and folded his arms. "Laura, since you're new here, you're probably not aware of the function that takes place here annually. It will be held on the next weekend, and I need the best of our staff to be there, because this function serves a very important cause for this hospital. Many elite members of the community will be attending it, and with the proper dialogue and impressions made, they might just make considerable donations to this hospital, so I advise you be prepared." Laura had assumed she was in trouble, but instead Atkin invited her to a party. Laura spoke to some colleagues about the function. She learned that those among the staff who were able to get these rich folk to contribute were rewarded with promotions. So before the next weekend, Laura prepared herself for the event. However, come the night of the party, seeing all the rich folk in the room, Laura started to feel a bit nervous. Nevertheless, she was well-spoken and an attractive young woman. Over the past 10 years, our hospital has progressed greatly in the field of orthopedics. Some of the best doctors from around the state work here, and with the right push, I know together we can reach higher goals. Over the course of the evening, she was able to get the attention of an elderly couple, who eventually agreed to donate generously to the hospital. "Thank you so much. Your gesture won't go unnoticed, and we will surely give our best into making this hospital into a better place for our neighborhood." As Laura spoke and greeted many more of the guests, she met a man named Victor McLeod. "So how long have you been in the field, Dr. Laura McKay?" "Well, after earning my MD at the BII Medical University, I practiced around the States, but I can't emphasize enough how rewarding it feels to work here in Michigan. The facilities are great, the doctors are caring. Indeed, competent and praiseworthy. I'm speaking to one of them right now." No, I couldn't say that. There are many other senior doctors here that are much more worthy of praise than I. But perhaps not as beautiful. Mr. McLeod chuckled. Laura awkwardly chuckled on with him. "Would a beautiful doctor like you be able to spare some time for a drink?" "Why not?" "Wonderful. Dr. McKay, I like the work you and your team are doing here, and I'd like to help, but I'll do so for a small favor." Mr. McLeod picked up 2 glasses and offered one to Laura. She nervously took it in her hands. She had been humoring and flirting with the man all evening, but she was only doing so for the fundraiser. But now, was he asking for something personal in return? Victor chuckled as he looked at the worry on Laura's face. "Dr. Atkin is well aware of the negotiation. Perhaps you would like to speak to him and let me know." Laura stood there confused and a bit scared, watching Mr. McLeod join the others. What negotiations? "Dr. Atkin, I was speaking to Mr. McLeod, and he was speaking of something regarding an agreement. I didn't quite get that." Dr. Atkin excused himself and pulled Laura aside. "It's a small price to pay, Dr. McKay. We are, and we will benefit from this. I hope this remains confidential as the donor would like." But before Laura could ask anything more, Dr. Atkin became occupied with the others again. Suddenly, she came to suspect this event was not as innocent-minded as she first supposed. Was this just a fundraiser or something more? That night turned out to be a reason of anxiety for Laura. Near 10 p.m., when she got ready to leave, she saw Mr. McLeod approaching her. "It was nice speaking to you, Dr. McKay. I hope we'll get to work together again." "You too, Mr. McLeod. It's quite late. I should be getting home." "Hold on. If you would like, my chauffeur can drop you off." "No, that will be all right. Good night," Laura quickly said with a nervous smile. As soon as she was out the door, she took a cab and returned home. She laid down in her bed, unable to sleep that night. What was going on? What business were these people involved in? What was Dr. Atkin up to? And now was she too wrapped in all of this? The next day, when Laura came back to work, her anxiety was at its peak, worried that Dr. Atkin would call her in and discuss whatever negotiations he had with those rich folk. Laura had already prepared herself to decline any explicit offers. However, the whole morning passed and Dr. Atkin was silent on the matter. Laura continued on with her daily tasks, meeting her patients, when she suddenly realized one of her patients were missing. Miss Anne Williams. Nancy, where is Anne? She wasn't supposed to be discharged till 2 more weeks. Dr. Laura, I'm so sorry, but Anne Williams passed away this morning. I heard she had some complications after the surgery. What are you talking about? She had a hip replacement surgery. Did she develop an infection? This doesn't make sense. Laura was thundered and heartbroken receiving the tragic news. Anne was recovering. After the surgery, she took her first steps with Laura just days ago. Laura immediately looked up the patient's records. That's when she became a little suspicious, seeing Anne had no symptoms or conditions leading up to her demise. But what was even more odd was the fact that her organs were donated, while Anne Williams wasn't an organ donor at all. Highly suspicious and confused, Laura hurried to the hospital morgue. There, she met Dr. Douglas Gordon. From the times she had interacted with him before, Dr. Gordon had been kind and polite. Perhaps he could give her some insight on the matter. Dr. Gordon, you must be aware of what's going on. One of my patients, Anne Williams, I was suddenly informed of her demise this morning. Nothing from her records are making any sense, and she wasn't an organ donor yet. Her organs were sent for donation. Dr. Gordon nodded and sighed. Dr. McKay, this isn't the first time this is happening. They've done this before. They? This is how this hospital runs. Every year, these rich folk donate large sums of money in return for these healthy organs from healthy individuals. So this is what McLeod was speaking of. But this is illegal, Dr. Gordon. How can this go unseen? False reports are produced prior to the death, and after the procedure is done, the body is prepared for funeral and sent back to their families. No one is opening up the cadaver to see what's missing. And Dr. Atkin is aware of this? This is wrong. Why hasn't anyone said anything? I agree with you, Dr. McKay. This is unethical, but everyone here is involved. You really don't have a choice but to comply. But Dr. Gordon, how can we keep quiet when innocent lives are being traded in as a business? We have to speak out. Dr. McKay, I don't have the power to do anything about this. If I speak out, I'll lose my job. I'll be in trouble. Laura was thundered knowing the truth. The doctors she assumed as righteous servers of the community turned out to be involved in this. Everyone was in on it, and everyone was playing along. Fortunately, she was able to convince Dr. Gordon to help expose this racket. They filed a complaint to the police, who arrived on site for an investigation the following day. However, when speaking to the doctors, everyone denied anything suspicious. Laura, have you gone mad? Something like this would happen under my watch? Laura was thundered seeing Dr. Atkin blatantly lie to the police, but unfortunately, she had no evidence to show for her claims but that of Anne Williams' records. Officers, the question still remains. Even if Anne Williams passed away a natural death, her organs are missing. Where did they go? Who were they donated to? Nothing is adding up. There must have been a mix-up. Officers, nothing like this has happened or will happen in this hospital. The police were unable to find any evidence and came to the conclusion that no rules or regulations were being violated. That evening, Laura left the hospital heavy-hearted. How was this possible that these people would escape the eyes of the authorities after committing such a heinous act? Now the last memory she had with Anne haunted her. She was such a happy young soul. Laura walked down the narrow road on her way to the bus stop. This road was always empty at this time, and now the silence was soothing in all the stress. But all peace was soon disrupted when she noticed a van screeching down the road. She didn't pay much heed to it at first, until it halted to a stop in front of her. Laura widened her eyes, seeing a few men staring at her. Get her. Who are you people? You won't get away with this. Laura was pushed into the van, blindfolded, her hands tied behind her back. No matter how much she screamed, none of her questions were answered, nor was she allowed to move an inch. It was about an hour's journey later that she felt the van stop. She was dragged out of the vehicle when finally her blindfold was taken off. Laura was stunned to see she wasn't alone. These men had abducted Dr. Gordon as well. Seeing the look of dread on his face, Laura felt a sense of regret. Was this the price they were paying for trying to expose those people? The men took them inside a mansion where suddenly Laura heard the whispers of more people as she was taken down the large hall. When she finally turned around into the grand dining hall, she suddenly noticed a few familiar faces. She was in the McLeod mansion. Mr. McLeod, shall we release them? Why, yes, of course. They're our guests. On the other side of the table, arranged with food and drinks in a lavish mansion, sat Victor McLeod, sipping on a glass of wine in his hands. With him were some others she recognized from the party, Dr. Atkin and others from the hospital as well, and the men that had brought her here. They were none other than the police to whom she and Dr. Gordon had complained to, working hand in hand with these elites. Victor McLeod got up and smiled. His heels echoed in the hall as he approached Laura. Darling, you thought I had interest in you. If only I was that good. I've invited you to join us for dinner. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
It was late on a quiet Sunday night in a small neighborhood in Queens, New York. Scott was walking down the street, keenly observing the last people of the night. She's probably no more than 15. What is she doing out at this time? And with him? Come on, we'll have some fun and I'll drop you home again. All right, let's go. Bad choice. Scott walked along, noticing another woman. She was wearing heavy makeup, high stilettos. She looked back at him and smirked. Need some company? Not tonight, beautiful. So she's here for business. Right around the curb, Scott's eye fell upon two men as they met each other and sneakily snuck a small package into the other's hand. Who could it be? As he walked further on towards the closed park, late at night, these parks became almost a safe haven for criminals to deal or hide. But tonight, it was eerily empty. Scott turned, hearing a car drive up not too far behind him. A young woman stepped out, talking on her phone as she took out her groceries. Finally got a day off, Cindy. I'm just gonna open a bottle of wine and relax all by myself. Scott scanned her from head to toe. From her watch and the diamond locket around her neck, he could tell she was well off. But for a woman like her to be out so late in a place like this was unexpected. Scott was planning to follow up and perhaps talk, but before he would take his first step toward her, the woman turned to look at him. Excuse me, mister. Would you mind helping me out? These are really heavy. My house is just down the block. With a shallow smile, Scott nodded and took the woman's bag. Just a few houses down the empty road, The woman stopped in front of a neatly maintained house. "Thank you for all the help." "No problem." With that, Scott headed back. But as he reached near her car again, he noticed a purse on the ground. Opening it up, he found her ID. Connie McCain, 24 years old. Scott turned back to her house and knocked on the door, but there was no answer. With a second knock, suddenly the door creaked open. "Excuse me, miss, you dropped your purse outside." Scott slowly stepped into the house. He could hear her hum. "Can she not hear me?" Scott was about to drop the purse and leave. But he suddenly got a whiff of a horrible stench coming from the hall. Curious, Scott walked down the hall as the stench got stronger, until he reached a bedroom. "Is anyone there?" He stepped inside a dimly lit room. The odor was horrendous, but just as Scott was to look around for its source, the door behind him forcefully shut closed. It couldn't have been the wind. The windows in this room were sealed. Scott tried to open the door, but to his surprise, it was locked shut. Did she just lock me in? "Is anyone out there? Open the door! Open the door!" But all Scott heard was the sound of footsteps and a faint laughter. Shocked, he immediately took out his multi-tool and tried to pick the lock. But nearly half an hour passed, and it seemed he was getting nowhere. I should let the others know. Scott took out his phone. There was no network. He then took out his wireless, but he couldn't get a signal. And in all this, the dim light above his head flickered off. Damn. Scott knew this was no accident. He was trapped here. Begging for help was not a solution. Taking out his lighter, Scott neared the windows and tried to look for weak spots. There were grills attached on the other side, so he wouldn't be able to get out unless he saw it through. Nonetheless, Scott gripped onto his multi-tool and hit the glass. He did once, twice, thrice, but there was not a scratch to be seen. What is going on? Why is this not breaking? Scott tried to build up momentum and threw his body against the wooden door. But even then, it wouldn't budge. After numerous attempts to escape, Scott only exhausted himself to no use. As the hours passed by, Scott started to feel lightheaded. He looked around as the room began to spin around him. Scott fell to the ground, feeling absolutely imbalanced. What is happening to me? Suddenly, Scott was startled as the walls seemed as if they were caving in on him. The room was becoming smaller. And just seconds later, the walls were spread so wide apart, Scott felt he was nothing in its comparison. He could no longer hear the faint noise of the traffic from outside, nor the wind, nothing. But his breath increasing by the second. Scott held his throat, unable to breathe, as he gasped. His vision started to become blurry in front of him. As he collapsed to the ground, laying on the floor, Scott shivered as a freezing temperature encompassed him. And he suddenly saw a figure, someone approaching him. Gathering all his strength, Scott weakly pulled himself up and reached out. "Who's there?" But it was almost immediately. Everything went to how it had been. Scott sat there terrified in the darkness, unable to understand what he experienced. He got up to check the door, but with one step, one of the wooden planks broke through as Scott's foot went underneath, touching something soft and wet. What is this? Scott lit his lighter and slowly pried his foot out of the hole before he tore off the wooden plank. The horrendous odor oozed out as Scott lowered the lighter closer. Can't be. There, under the wooden planks, was the decomposing body of Connie McCain. A few months ago, on a quiet Sunday night like tonight, Connie McCain had gone out to run some errands. She planned to spend the night at rest all to herself, but what she didn't know was that night would be her last night. As Connie struggled to carry her groceries back to the house, a man approached her. "Let me help you." "No, it's all right." "Please, I insist." As the man grabbed onto her bags, Connie reluctantly accepted the help. "All right, my house is just down the block. Thank you so much." "Don't mention it." As Connie innocently went along, she didn't realize the man had pickpocketed her purse. But this wasn't to be his jackpot. He had bigger plans with her. Dropping off her groceries, the man let her be and went off. And just an unsuspicious while later, he returned knocking on her door. Connie saw the man through her camera and turned on the telecom. "Can I help you?" "No, it's just that you dropped your purse outside. I came to return it." It was quite late at night, and Connie didn't want to allow anyone in. "Just leave it in the mailbox, and thank you again." Connie then watched as the man dropped her purse in the mailbox and left. And when the coast was clear, she opened the door to get her purse. Phew. These men, when they find a girl alone, they just won't leave them. Taking her purse, Connie went back in, safe and secure, and locked the door. But the minute she turned, she was horrified to see the man standing right behind her. "You? How did you get in?" "Because I'm you." Cheryl. She was no woman, nor man. She was no human being. Cheryl was among the creatures of the night. She had strength, speed, no man could compare to. But she also had something even other creatures like her couldn't compete with. Cheryl could shapeshift and read minds. Once every week, she traveled at night searching for a potential victim for her next hunt to satisfy her hunger and thirst. Sometimes she fooled men, and sometimes women, and sometimes whatever she could get her hands on. And after she had gotten what she wanted from them, Cheryl cunningly disposed of the remains to lead the police to assume a serial killing had been taking place in the neighborhood and rid herself of any suspicion. And the BIIPD fell into the hoax, as many people were suddenly going missing and later found lifeless in horrible conditions, sometimes in the woods or by the lakeside the BIIPD began investigating. They realized one common factor among the deaths were that it took place every Friday night and in a certain area. Thus, they suspected it was the work of a serial killer. So they assigned undercover officer Scott Brown on the case. Officer Scott had been patrolling the neighborhood at night, observing the people, searching for potential culprits and potential victims. When he saw Connie, he had not suspected her as a culprit. But Connie, or Cheryl in her disguise, had read his mind. So he's an undercop. He's on to me. Figured out my location too. Sorry, officer. Looks like tonight will be your night. Cheryl intentionally dropped her purse, knowing the innocent officer would return to give it back to her. And once she baited him to her, she locked him in the room where he could suffer and die. But there was something even Cheryl was not aware of. As she had taken the form of Connie, she had buried the remains of Connie McCain in the house, where no one would find her, and no one would know she was no more. But Connie's spirit became trapped there. And when Officer Scott fell into the same situation, she haunted him as a means of finding her freedom. Scott stepped back, shocked to see the body of Connie McCain. How can this be? Is this the truth? If Connie McCain's body is here, the woman I saw outside can't be her. She's something else. But will anyone believe me? Scott looked at the door, gripping onto his multi-tool. He couldn't quit. He needed to get out of here. Officer Ruth Jameson, Scott's partner, had been patrolling another region of the neighborhood when she suddenly lost Scott's signal. When she was unable to contact him, she felt concerned and immediately reported to the precinct. As she went out in search for him, Officer Scott's last signal had been outside a certain street before he simply went offline. Where could he go? It was almost 3 a.m. when the rain began to pour. Ruth reached the lonely dark street and parked her car. She walked to the exact point in the rain, suddenly shouting out as she noticed a figure ahead of her. As she neared closer, she realized it was Scott. Scott, you're here? I've been looking for you the whole night. You got the whole team so concerned. What happened? My wireless wasn't working for some reason. Thunder rumbled in the air as the rain fell heavier. Looks like there's going to be a storm. Aren't you heading home? I'll take a walk. All right. Finally. What are you? As for now, Officer Scott Brown.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
It was a cool, windy summer night in the small town of Malinalco, Mexico. Margarita was expecting her first child, almost 7 months pregnant. She and her husband Raul were eager for the baby's arrival and had already started preparing. After a long day of rearranging their room for the newcomer, Margarita stood by the window taking in the cool summer breeze. What a peaceful night. She closed her eyes, when suddenly she heard the sound of a baby from inside the room. Startled, Margarita turned, staring at the new crib where the sound of the baby's cry was coming from. But how could that be? Margarita curiously stepped forward, surprised to see a beautiful baby laying inside. Where did this child come from? She intently stared into the child's deep blue eyes, about to pick her up, when she froze, seeing those blue eyes begin to change. Margarita woke up startled. She looked to the corner of the room. The crib lay empty. Her husband Raul got up beside her. "Margarita, what happened?" "I saw a strange dream." All of a sudden, Margarita held her belly, feeling a piercing pain. "Raul, it's hurting." Early that dawn, Raul arranged for a carriage to visit the doctor in the neighboring village. The weather was gloomy and the skies foreshadowed a storm to come, but Margarita's pain seemed to be getting worse, and the expecting parents were concerned. "Doctor, is everything all right? I can hear the baby's heartbeat. It's a strong and healthy child. Things like this can happen in pregnancy. It's normal. Try to get rest and eat well." "Do you have electricity in your home?" "No, doctor. It hasn't reached our village yet." "I see. Is there anyone at home who can help out?" "Yes, doctor. My mother lives with us." "That's wonderful. Everything seems fine, so you two can return home. There's no reason for worry. Take care." Margarita and Raul left the doctor sometime in the afternoon, finally relieved hearing the good news. They went to the marketplace and had some tamales from a street stall, and Raul picked up some guavas for Margarita. Before they returned back home sometime late in the evening, Raul's mother Teresa was pacing out in the yard waiting for them. "Raul, Margarita, how is everything? Is my grandson all right?" "Yes, mother. The doctor said there's no need to worry." "That's good. Now let's go, Margarita. Why don't you get some rest and I'll prepare food?" Margarita was quite exhausted after returning from the doctor's. She spent much of the evening trying to relax. But she felt strange. She felt so hot. It was midsummer, but Margarita had never felt like this before. "Raul, why is it feeling so hot?" "Hot? The weather has cooled down a lot." Margarita tried fanning herself and wearing a lighter pair of clothes, but nothing helped. "I can't drink this, Raul. The water's become hot." "Hold on, I'll bring some cold water from the well for you." But even after drinking cold water and splashing it onto her face, Margarita still felt suffocated by the heat. That night, she lay in bed, wide awake, feeling like her skin was burning. But strange as it was, Raul was sleeping sound. Margarita slipped out of bed and went out to the back to catch a breath of air. She looked out to the pond, just a walk away from the house. Back when she was living in her father's home, she would go to the lake nearby her home to swim or bathe. But after she got married and moved here, One of the first things she was told was not to go near the pond or the tamarind tree near the pond. But tonight, in this condition, Margarita was tempted to take a dive. She passed a glance back inside. Her mother-in-law and Raul were sleeping. She would just go in for a while, cool down her body, and keep her hair dry. No one would know. So Margarita walked out to the pond. The water felt so refreshing. The cool breeze now felt so comfortable. "What are you doing here in the pond at this time?" Margarita was startled to see it was her neighbor, Leticia. They both shared the same well. She must have seen her when she came to take water. I was feeling really hot, so I thought I'd cool down. No, not in this pond. This water isn't good." "But the water is so clear. There aren't any fish in this pond." "Even so, if you're feeling hot, I'll pick some water for you from the well. Take a bath instead." Margarita found the matter quite odd, but since Leticia insisted, she got out and followed her to the well. Leticia picked up a bucket of water and Margarita washed off. "Why doesn't anyone use this pond? Everyone has only told me not to go in it." "There is no reason." That night, Margarita returned home and was finally able to get some sleep. The following day, the weather was moist and the thunder continuously rumbled. The gray clouds allowed not a speck of sunshine to seep through. But even today, Margarita felt so exhausted due to the heat. "Margarita, did you go out last night?" "Yes, I was feeling so hot, I took a bath." "Who picked up the water for you?" "Leticia was there. She helped me." In the evening, the rain finally began to pour, and the cold breeze blew all throughout the house. "It's raining quite heavily. Are you still feeling hot? Do you want me to bring you some water?" "No, Raul, I'm fine." Margarita assumed tonight she would be able to sleep sound to the cool weather. But in just a few hours, she woke up feeling awful. Unable to fall asleep again, she looked out her window, staring at the rain pour into the pond. Should she take a swim again? She went in yesterday, and everything was fine, and it wasn't even that deep that she would drown. So Margarita tied her hair and went out to the pond. The rain felt so relieving, and the moist air was soothing. But a while into swimming, Margarita suddenly felt something move by her leg. She tried looking into the water. She knew there was no fish in this pond. What was that? As Margarita moved around trying to see what it was, she felt that striking pain in her belly again. And this time, when she looked under, she froze seeing something glow in the water. Those same eyes. Hearing her scream, Raul hurried out to see Margarita in the water. "Margarita, what are you doing out here in the pond? What happened?" "Raul, I was feeling so hot. I came to cool off in the rain and the pain suddenly started again." Raul hurried to help Margarita out and took her inside. She lay in bed, struggling with immense pain all night. When Teresa heard what happened, she spent the night by Margarita's side, trying to fan her, putting a cold cloth on her, but nothing seemed to help. "Margarita, the carriage is here. Let's go." It was sometime around 9 a.m. The couple reached the doctor's again. Seeing Margarita's condition, the doctor immediately brought her inside. "I'm sorry. but there is no heartbeat or movement. Probably the child is no more. You'll have to stay here until the child is naturally delivered. The rain became much heavier now, and the streets too began to flood. Raúl was devastated hearing the news. And Margarita, she couldn't bear the pain she was going through. She lay in bed, tossing from side to side, until sometime late in the evening again. She fainted from the tremendous pain. Raúl immediately brought the doctor to examine her. When the doctor suddenly saw a movement from Margarita's belly, the baby is alive. This is a miracle. Hearing the good news, Raúl and Margarita got a sense of solace that couldn't be more relieving. But this time, the couple was sure they would be careful. How are you feeling now, Margarita? Better, Mother. I heard you went to the pond when you were told not to. Sorry, Mother. Never go to the pond again. Margarita had no plans on going to the pond ever again, after what she experienced. But in the following days, she noticed how Teresa and Raúl kept an eye on her. Teresa was always questioning her. Margarita, where are you going? Just going out to dry some clothes. And it seemed Raúl was always alert. What happened? Are you feeling hot? I'll fan you. Try to go back to sleep. It was one night. Margarita had gone out to the back to fetch some water. But as she was returning, she suddenly spotted someone standing in the shadow of the tamarind tree. Was it Leticia? Leticia, are you feeling hot too? She took my child. Who took your child? What do you think? You have a son in your womb? You too have a daughter, and she won't spare her either. Who won't spare her? She took my daughter while I was asleep and threw her in the pond. All of a sudden, hearing Raúl shout from inside, Margarita hurried to return. Margarita, where are you? I'm out here. I was bringing water. Why are you carrying so much weight? I would have gotten it for you. As Raúl took the bucket inside, Margarita turned to speak to Leticia again. But she was gone. Where did she go? That night, Margarita lay in bed, wondering about what Leticia said. Why was she behaving so strange? So the following day, around sunset, she decided to visit her. Margarita, you're here? I heard what happened. Is everything all right? Yes, Leticia, I'm fine, but I wanted to speak to you. What is it? Was it you last night by the tamarind tree? What happened? What were you saying in the dark? The look on Leticia's face suddenly changed as she asked, You saw someone and you spoke to her? It wasn't you? No. Leticia, what is it that you all aren't telling me? What is the secret of the pond? Who did I see? And why is this happening to me? Margarita, please don't force me to tell you. It's better you don't know. No, Leticia, I need to know. I'm pregnant. It's a matter of my child's life. All right, I'll tell you. But first, no, we didn't tell you because it would scare you. Your husband is a very good man. The whole village knows that. But he was married before. You aren't his first wife. He was married to a girl named Gloria. And they had a child together. It was a beautiful baby girl. But it was one day, while the child was sleeping in the crib, she suddenly went missing. No one could find her anywhere, until 2 days later, The child was found floating in the pond. Everyone was frightened. No one could think of any explanation as to how the child got there from the crib. But it was after the child's death that Gloria started to go insane. And then she too was found lifeless, having hung herself from the tamarind tree. After hearing the story from Leticia, Margarita returned home feeling anxious and quite suspicious. Why did Raúl hide all of this from her? Raúl, can I ask you something? What? Were you married before? Did you have another child? After staying silent for some time, Raúl said with a sigh, "Yes, Margarita, I know secrets like this don't remain hidden. And if you found out I was married, you probably also know what happened with her and my child. I didn't tell you thinking you would misunderstand me. Gloria, she had mental issues. When we got married, she was fine, but after she got pregnant, she started to lose her mind. Until whatever happened, happened." Speaking to Raúl only raised Margarita's suspicion. Could it be that it was him who had taken his daughter's life? And then Gloria's? Was it Gloria's she had seen by the tree? Who had she been speaking of? She took my child. It was sometime after sunset the following day that Raúl and Margarita heard a scream from the pond. They hurried out to see Leticia trembling in fright as she pointed to the water. There in the pond was a lifeless body afloat. Mother? How did this happen? Everyone was grieved receiving the news of Teresa's demise. No one could understand how it happened, but assumed it to be an accident. But with heavy hearts, they performed the burial the following dawn. A month after Teresa's death, Margarita and Raúl's child was finally born. What a beautiful baby girl, the doctor said, smiling as she handed the child to Margarita. Margarita held her daughter to her chest, finally in the safety of her arms. Mother couldn't see any of my children. Margarita looked at Raúl confused. Had she not seen your first child? Mother had gotten the pox while Gloria was pregnant, so she went to live with my sister, not wanting to be near her. And before she could return, the child passed away. Mother never saw the child. Margarita fell silent as her heart trembled, remembering the evening Teresa was found. Margarita, what are you doing out here? I came out to pick some tamarind. I'll pick them for you. As Teresa stepped onto a raised root to pick the tamarind, Margarita asked, Mother, haven't you ever gotten into the pond? No, I never learned how to swim, so I don't go in. It was Margarita who had pushed Teresa into the pond that dark evening, but now, knowing the truth, she was devastated. What had she done?
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. Alert! Alert! Territory has been ambushed. Stand back! Return! Take shelter! How's the morning, Crystal? I have a busy day ahead of me, Lena. Gotta finish work and then I have a special date tonight. Oh, that sounds nice. Where are you going? I don't know. Seth said it's gonna be a surprise. I can't wait. Looks like the relationship is getting pretty serious. Yeah, he's a great guy. Things have been going really well. Alright, gotta go. The clock is ticking. Dr. Crystal Gibson hurried off to her office room at the BII healthcare facility in Hoover, Alabama. She had been working as a neurologist here for the past 2 years. And over this time, she had developed a close bond with many of the workers and colleagues, and especially with her patients, building a good reputation for herself in the field. Crystal's life was going great. She had money, and recently, she met a man who she really enjoyed spending time with. His name was Seth. Crystal chuckled as she looked at a picture of Seth and her she had recently taken when they had gone to a local fair together. It seemed like the universe had brought them together. If Crystal hadn't stopped to help him that day, they probably would have never crossed paths. Crystal was returning home from work. Usually she drove back home, but that day she had left the office on foot because she had to have her car towed to the garage after getting into a little accident. But fortunately, home was only 20-25 minutes walk away. She was headed down a quiet street, enjoying the cool autumn breeze, when she noticed a car had been parked up ahead. There was a man sitting in the driver's seat with the door opened. As she walked past the car, she suddenly stopped, a bit shocked to see the man had an injury on his forehead. And seeing her, he called out for help. "Excuse me, could you please help me?" Instinctively, Crystal took out a few napkins from her bag and hurried to the man. "How did this happen? Are you okay?" "It's a long story, but to sum it up, it was an accident. I thought I would drive myself to the hospital, but I'm starting to black out. I've been waiting here for 10 minutes now trying to pull it together. The hospital is just around the corner. I'm Dr. Gibson. I can help you get there. I'll call an ambulance for you." "I don't think I'll make it till then. I'm feeling horrible. I hope this doesn't sound odd, but do you know how to drive? Could you drive me there?" Sure, if that's not a problem with you. I think I have bigger problems to worry about." Since that one destined meeting, Seth booked an appointment, or rather excuses, with Crystal and started meeting her at the office. And then they started meeting outside, and it had been a wonderful 2 months of their relationship since. The day at the facility went by hectic. Crystal had been booked for one surgery and a few appointments with other patients, but she had finally gone through with the day. There was only one patient left, and she could head back home and get ready for her special night. Crystal pressed the call button and informed the nurse. "Send in the next patient, please." And it was within a while that Crystal heard a knock on her door. The nurse had escorted a blind man to the office. "Come in, Mr. Mark Thompson." Crystal took a look at the patient files. This patient of hers was a veteran. He had come in a few days prior and had been a test done after being referred to her from an optician. The man had a rather bizarre case. After several examinations done on his eyes, the optician couldn't point out the cause of him being blind. His eyes, cornea, retina, and optic nerves were all in good condition, but he was still unable to see. Hence, the optician suspected an underlying neurological issue might be the cause. How have you been, Mr. Thompson? Well, I've been learning things anew. Of course, the usual now isn't the usual from before. It will be a difficult journey, but that's why we're all here to support each other. Thank you, doctor. I was informed my test results have come in. Yes, they have. And I have to say I'm truly bewildered myself. I too can't seem to point out why you're unable to see. Strange as it is, the MRI brain scans have come back positive. It's good news. There aren't any reasons for worry. All else looks normal. Perhaps if we do a few more tests, we might find out a clue to this unusual condition of yours. That's all right, doctor. I've been to a few other specialists and they've all told me the same. I've accepted the fact that perhaps I'll never see again. But the reason for me coming to you is because something strange has been happening to me ever since I lost my eyesight. And what is that? I've been getting a strange smell. I can't seem to understand what it is. No one around me has ever smelt it, but I smell it. And I've come to realize this smell comes from certain individuals. Whoever I smell it from happens to pass away. Pass away? How can that be? Can you tell me, when do you get the smell? I first noticed the smell when I was outside, in public places like at the marketplace or at the park. And I instinctively ignored it, thinking it could be anyone or anything. But then, one day about 3 weeks ago, my friend, he is a soldier, he came to meet me before he was being stationed overseas. That was the first time I had smelt that scent in my home, so close to me. Roger, what is that smell? Smell? What smell? The food? I don't smell anything odd. No, it's different. It's coming from you. Are you wearing something? No, Mark, it's just some cologne. No, it's not that. A few days after he left for duty, I was informed he passed away. Mr. Thompson, something like this could happen with any soldier. It's not unusual. As a matter of fact, what I believe you're experiencing is actually quite normal as well. Loss of eyesight can cause your other senses to heighten, such as your hearing, smell, and taste. You don't understand. This hasn't just happened once, but again. One of my distant relatives had come to see me after she heard of my condition. I got the same scent from her, and she too passed away in a car accident that very night. Rose, do you smell that? Have you put something on yourself? No, Uncle. I don't know what you're talking about. It's so strong. How can you not smell it? I understand your concern, Mr. Thompson, but your MRI scans don't indicate any abnormalities. There is a condition known as parosmia, in which patients detect a phantom scent when there is actually no scent present at all. This happens when there is damage to the olfactory senses underneath the front of your brain. But this is highly uncommon and, like I said, your MRI scans haven't shown anything. But doctor, how can this happen over and over again? Mr. Thompson, the possibilities of a soldier passing away in the battlefield are high. And as for your relative, it could be a mere coincidence. I know you have returned from duty yourself. And perhaps what you're experiencing is post-traumatic stress disorder. This isn't real. You have seen people lose their lives in front of you, and it had a traumatic effect on you. This isn't a physical issue, but it can be a psychological issue, not a neurological one. I can give you a referral to a therapist. I understand, doctor. Thank you. That would be very helpful. You're welcome. It was nice meeting you. You can pick up the referral papers from the reception. As the man got up, so did Dr. Gibson. I'll escort you to the door. She helped him out where his nurse was waiting for him. She felt for the man, but there was nothing she could really do for him. His condition was, however, quite intriguing. Could there be such a thing like the smell of death? Mark was leaving with his nurse when he suddenly felt someone brush past him. He sighed as he walked on. We'll soon come to know if this is indeed psychological or real. Dr. Gibson. Crystal was about to return to her office when she heard a familiar voice call her from behind. "Seth, you're here? Are you done for the day? Let's go." "From here? You were supposed to pick me up from home. I'm not even ready." "You look gorgeous as is, sweetheart." "Oh please, after a long day of work, I'm looking anything but gorgeous." Crystal quickly packed her bag and headed out of the facility with Seth. Seth rushed to unlock his door and opened it for her. "Ladies first. May I know now where we're going?" "Nope. I want to see the surprise on your face when we get there." Seth took out a handkerchief and handed it to Crystal. "I have to blindfold myself. Wow, what kind of surprise is this? I'm so excited." "Like nothing you've ever experienced before. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." "What is it? A shooting comet? Is there an eclipse?" Seth chuckled. "Relax, it's going to take a while." And surely, it wasn't until almost an hour, driving through the suburbs, that Seth drove into the parkway of a farmhouse. Are we here yet? Almost. Hearing the sound of Seth's keys jostle, Crystal curiously asked, "Are we at your place?" "At my farmhouse." "You never told me you had a farmhouse." "Well, there's still a lot of things I have to tell you." Seth took Crystal down the hall to a room. As she stepped inside, still blindfolded and eager to see her surprise, she suddenly got a strange smell in the air. She could hear Seth close the door behind him and turn the lock. "Are you ready?" Seth chuckled as he slipped the blindfold off. "I can't wait." But as soon as Crystal opened her eyes, the smile on her lips vanished. Missing neurologist has been found lifeless in the forests of the suburbs around Hoover after 4 days of the doctor last being seen. Police are now investigating and have confirmed that the woman was a victim to a serial killer in town. So far, 8 victims have been found, all women from around the age of 25 to 30, dark-haired and single, are being targeted. The BIIPD advises anyone who matches this description to stay safe and not communicate with any strangers. BII News, Hoover, Alabama. Mark sighed as he listened to the local news. I knew this was going to happen. This had all started from the day on the battlefield when Mark had nearly died. "Alert! Alert! Territory has been ambushed. Stand back! Return! Take shelter!" That dreadful day, Mark had seen the angel of death descend. Gazing upon the angel had caused him to lose his eyesight, but he had acquired the ability to smell its presence. When he had visited Dr. Gibson, he had smelled that unusual scent from her as well. Mark had come to realize this wasn't something medical science could answer. This had to be something more, something from the other realm. But was this a gift or a curse? The angel of death, the one who comes to take man away from his vessel, the vessel onto which man was born. Birth and death is unavoidable, and when the determined time comes to pass for every individual, the angel of death shall visit him 7 times before it returns with their soul. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It was a cool afternoon in the small village of Kani in rural eastern Russia. Nikola had set off from home with his father's flock of sheep to graze in the mountains. In the midst of the autumn season, much of the lands were now barren. However, after a long walk, he finally found a good spot and let the herd free. But as the skies started to become dark, Nikola thought it best to return home. He stood up on a boulder and called to the flock, "Sledovat, sledovat!" Instantly, all the sheep rushed to follow after him. They always listened to his voice. Nikola counted them as he ushered them on with a stick. But as he walked down the path, Nikola suddenly began to sense something was off. He scanned the woods around him, a bit nervous, feeling an odd motion. And it was soon enough that he heard a low grunting sound behind him. He turned around, widening his eyes, at a Siberian tiger staring directly at him. Not knowing what to do, he held his stick in defense and picked up a rock. As the tiger lifted off its legs and began running towards him. But just when the tiger was a distance away from him, Nikola suddenly heard footsteps running out from the woods. He stared in horror as a man jumped out in front of the tiger. To his amazement, the animal suddenly stood his ground, as if frightened by the man's presence, and ran off the other way. The young boy's heart raced as the man turned and came towards him. He appeared more frightening in person than what the villagers said. He was tall, broad, he carried an axe over his shoulder and wore a cowl over his head. "These mountains are unsafe at this time. Don't come here in the evenings." Nikola nodded his head nervously as the man patted his shoulder. "Call your flock. I'll walk you back to the village." As soon as Nikola closed the fence, he hurried inside his home. "It took you longer than usual today." Nikola sat down at the table with his father and his sister. "I had to go far to find a good spot for the sheep, and on the way back I was almost attacked by a tiger." "What? How'd you get away?" "I wouldn't have if it wasn't for the Sylvan. He saved me from it." "I heard his real name is Yakov. The villagers call him Sylvan. Did he speak to you? Is he really like how they say?" "There was something so strange about him. It was like the tiger got scared of him." "You should have been more careful, Nikola. Misha, tomorrow take your brother with you and give 2 fatty lambs to the man as a gift." "Okay, father." The next day, Misha and Nikola picked out 2 of the best lambs from their father's flock and set out towards Yakov's home. He lived by himself on the outskirts of the village by the mountainside. When the brother and sister got there, they found he wasn't home, but his hut was left open. "Nikola, tie the lambs properly over here." As her brother tied the lambs to a wooden post by Yakov's hut, Misha went inside. There wasn't much: a wooden bed, some essentials, and Yakov's tools. Misha cleaned the hut and hurried out to check on her brother. "Let's go, we have to be back before sunset." Yakov was a woodsman, and every morning he went into the mountains forests to fell wood he later sold at the market. Animals always had a strange aversion to him, and over the days, Yakov managed to pull the day's load on his own in a small wooden wagon. After a long day of work, he arrived back to the marketplace and went to Ivanov's stall, the man to whom he always sold the logs. "Here you go, Yakov. How is everything?" Yakov turned to see a few people murmuring as they passed by him. They all hurried off the other way. "Look, it's the Sylvan! The Sylvan! Why does he always wear that?" "Some people say he's not a man, he's something else. Whenever he's around, he brings a cold presence." Yakov sighed as he took the coins from Ivanov. "As usual, on my way back home." But before Yakov would return home, he had to make a stop. He walked to a friend's home, Dmitri, and knocked on his door. His wife opened up a bit startled to see him. Dmitri is unwell. I know. He didn't come to collect wood with me. I've left some wood here. When he's better, he can take this to the market. Take care. Seeing Yakov leave with his wagon, Lydia picked up the bundle and hurried inside. Yakov was here. He left some wood for us. You should have invited him inside. I was afraid. You know what the people say. You used to worry for me when I used to go with him to the mountains, but he's a good man, Lydia. By the time Yakov returned to his hut, it was near sunset. As he entered through the fence, he was surprised to hear the cry of lambs. Who left these here? He went inside to find his hut neatly arranged as well. He sat down and poured some water into a mug, but just as he was to wash his hands and face, he heard an odd noise from outside. He hurried out behind his hut to see exactly what he suspected. In the distance from the woods they emerged and walked up to him. Why are you here? Your lord has summoned you, Yakov. He's not my lord, and you are not welcomed here. Haven't you learned your lesson? Have you forgotten what he is capable of? I'm not afraid of him. Fear the Lord, Yakov. He spared your life once, but he won't spare you again. Your lord has chosen someone from this village. Leave from here, and do not dare return to this village. As long as I'm here, there is nothing you can do. You will soon pay the price, Yakov. You will soon pay the price. That night, Yakov laid in bed, unable to rest from the sounds of the lambs continuously crying. But it wasn't like he got sleep anyways. The next day, when he returned from the mountains, he picked up the 2 lambs in his wagon and took it to the village. As they continuously cried behind him, villagers in the marketplace all turned to look and glare at him. Even the animals sensed something odd about him. Yakov took the 2 lambs to the Kuzman's house. After his death, Kuzma's widow had been struggling to raise his 2 sons on her own. She would make better use of these lambs. When Misha saw Yakov at the marketplace with the 2 lambs, she followed after him and watched as he spoke to Kuzma's widow and gave the 2 lambs to her 2 boys. As he returned from there, Misha built up the courage to approach him. Mister. Yakov turned to see a young woman standing behind him. You gave the lamb to the Kuzmans, but it was a gift for you. So it was you who cleaned my hut and left the lambs. Yes, you saved my brother. We wanted to thank you. You're welcome, but there are others who are more in need of a gift than I. When Misha returned from the market, her father was desperately waiting for her. Where were you, Misha? Why did it take you so long to come home? No reason, father. The Lubovs ran out of wheat, so I had to go to another stall. Misha, you know what's been happening. Young girls like you have gone missing. You know what condition they returned. I don't want you late again. Yes, father. However, later that evening, while her father was busy in his workshop, Misha sneaked out to the stable. She slowly bent over the sheep's fence and picked out a lamb in her arms. Misha, what are you doing? Startled, Misha turned to look at her brother. Oh, it's you. I'm taking this to Yakov. You're going to give another lamb to him? What if father finds out? Yes, I am. And how is father going to find out? Unless you tell him. He saved your life, Nicola. Be grateful. But it's already dark out, Misha. Don't worry, Misha said, taking the lantern from the stable. Keep guard till I'm back. No way. If father knows about this, I had nothing to do with it. Misha twisted her brother's ear before she hurried off towards the mountains. It would only take about 20 minutes to get there. She would just leave it and run back home. As she crossed over the village, leaving behind the houses, it became awfully dark. She carefully took each step in the rugged path. When all of a sudden, she heard something rustle above in the trees. She looked up, but didn't spot anything. Anxiously, she pushed the small lamp to hurry on. when all of a sudden she became horrified seeing a dark figure swoop down from above and clutch onto the small lamb before it flew off. Misha froze in fear as she saw a few more of them jump down surrounding her. They all looked at her menacingly as Misha began to sweat. She was trapped. How was she going to get out of this? It was some time after sunset. Yakov was having supper. Kuzma's boys had come to the hut with a roasted lamb as a gift for him. As he was having the meal, he suddenly heard the sound of a scream outside. He left his food and rushed out to see the matter. The cry was coming from the woods. Yakov ran, following the sound. Suddenly, getting a glimpse of them, they had come to take the one. "Help! Help!" Yakov didn't wait a second longer and charged at them, just barely managing to loosen their grip from the young woman. He screamed at her, "Run from here!" Misha was frightened to her core as she ran behind one of the trees and watched Yakov fight them off. But her heart raced when they threw Yakov to the ground when she heard them hit him. She felt as if her heart would leap out of her chest when Yakov began to have trouble breathing, fighting them back. She suddenly froze, seeing a bright light descend from the skies. She was overawed at the sight of an angel. Upon its arrival, the dark figures hurried to escape its clutches, and the angel stood in front of Yakov. It stretched out its hand, ripping off his cowl. Yakov stood exposed, horns protruding from his head, wings from his back, a demon himself. Years ago, Yakov Ilyin lived in a small town in northern Siberia. A loyal soldier to his king, he was among the bravest and the courageous, but people knew him best for his sense of righteousness. Hence, a holy man from his town had wedded his daughter to him. Yakov was doing well in his life, but he felt guilt in his heart for the atrocious acts he saw his fellow soldiers committing under the authority of the king. "Why do you look so stressed, Yakov? What is bothering you?" "The king took the lives of so many innocent people just to conquer their lands. This can't be justified, and now he's sending out troops for another invasion. I can't be part of this, Svetlana." "I'm always with you, Yakov. Let us move from here. Let us go far away." Unfortunately, when the news reached the king, he sent his soldiers to bring Yakov. That day, Yakov was able to fend off the soldiers from himself, but he wasn't able to save his wife. When Svetlana's father learned his son-in-law's house was ambushed by soldiers, he rushed to see the matter. But when he reached there, he found his daughter was no more. In grief, he cursed Yakov. "I trusted you with my daughter's life, and now my daughter is dead, while you still live. I curse you. Your life shall be the life of a demon." When the holy man cursed him, the Dark Lord descended and bounded Yakov by a shackle around his neck. At once, Yakov transformed into this demonic form. Horns protruded from his head, wings erupted from his back. But Yakov continued to condemn the Dark Lord. "You're not my lord. I will never obey you." But the Dark Lord only laughed at his remark.
"We will see how long it takes for you to give in to your malevolent instincts with the powers I have bestowed on you."
Yakov not only appeared as a ruthless demon, but he had the power of one. However, Yakov was determined he would never take the favor of the Dark Lord. He ran away from that town and settled in the mountains of Kani, where he began leading this life, firm that he would never stray to the wrong path. But it was recently that Yakov had gotten the news that young women were going missing from nearby villages, only to return pregnant. He was abhorred, knowing the Dark Lord had been taking these innocent women in search of a bride to beget him an heir. But when his demons had come to Kani to summon him, Yaakov threatened them he wouldn't allow such. And alas, Yaakov kept his word, be it if he would have to sacrifice his life for it. Yaakov stared at the brightness of the angel of the Lord of Light, as he grasped onto the shackle around Yaakov's throat and broke it apart. All of a sudden, Yaakov felt the heavy burden lift off of him, as the light disappeared once again into the skies. As Yaakov dropped to the ground, Misha rushed to him, seeing him as the man he truly was. Tears fell from her eyes as she watched him struggle to breathe. No, don't worry, I'll get help. It's time. I'm free. Laying in the moist grass covered in dew, under the light of the moon, on a tranquil night, Yaakov breathed his last in peace. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.
My wife isn't home. Come over. Where is he? You? Hey, getting ready? Almost done. When is the flight? In 2 hours. Great, how long will you be staying in Seattle? Well, the seminar is just 1 day, but maybe I can manage a few more days. Depends on you. You know my situation, Natasha. If Lisa finds out, there's gonna be trouble. Richard, if you're not happy with her, why don't you just separate? It's complicated. Anyways, where are you staying? I got a BII Airbnb about an hour from the city. It's a single room of a private house of this woman. Alright, can't wait to see you. Six months ago, Natasha met Richard at a BII TikTok business seminar held in Boise, Idaho. Richard lived in Seattle, and he had come on a business trip for a few days. They got introduced, instantly connected, and had a thrilling weekend. But even after Richard returned to Seattle, they kept in touch, and soon, what was to be a casual business affair turned into a romantic relationship. Natasha liked Richard a lot. However, there was a problem. Richard was a married man, but as far as she knew, his relationship with his wife was strained. So she was hoping he would end things with her, and then perhaps they could become official. After many months, BII TikTok was hosting another seminar, this time in Seattle, and Natasha was quite excited about her trip. She had been eagerly waiting to get to meet Richard again. After a 2-hour flight that afternoon, Natasha reached Seattle late in the afternoon. Taxi! And after another hour-long drive, she finally reached her BII Airbnb. The house was well maintained. The neighborhood seemed decent, but the houses were spaced quite far apart. There weren't even any stores nearby. She would have to grab a taxi every time she went out. Seconds into knocking on the door, a woman opened up. She was rocking a baby over her shoulder as she smiled big and wide, seeing Natasha. You must be from BII Airbnb. I'm Lydia Simmons. Yes, hello. Natasha Jameson. Yes, I know. I was actually waiting for you. Natasha followed the woman inside. The house was neatly arranged and it was pretty cozy. "Take a seat. I'll just put the baby down in the nursery and join you." "Sure." "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." Natasha sat down in the living room, listening to Lydia sing her lullabies. There were a few rooms down the hall. As she waited, she suddenly noticed one of the doors open. Through the small crack, she saw a man standing there, staring at her. Feeling uncomfortable, Natasha looked away. She thought this woman lived on her own. She didn't mention anything on her BII Airbnb. "Sorry for the wait, Natasha." Lydia hurried back and sat down right next to her, uncomfortably close. "Since you'll be staying here, we should get to know each other a little." Lydia pulled out her phone and quickly took a selfie with Natasha before she could even realize what she was doing. "Wow, the pic turned out great. You're really photogenic." As Lydia scrolled through the pics, Natasha was a bit creeped out noticing she had a bunch of selfies with a lot of other girls. Were they too all her tenants? Why was this woman so touchy and clingy? "Can I see my room?" "Yes, of course. Come on." "And is there anyone else living in the house?" Lydia's smile suddenly vanished for a second as she peered into the hallway and whispered, "Has he been staring?" She then looked at Natasha. "He's my brother. He's a bit strange, but don't bother about him. He's mostly harmless. Now come on." "Here is your room." "Thank you. And one more thing, are there any protocols around the house I should know of?" "No, just enjoy your stay. And if you need anything, let me know. My door is the last one down the hall. Oh, I think that's the baby." Lydia hurried off again as Natasha closed the door and laid down on her bed. She was exhausted. She closed her eyes for a while. Just when she heard a quick, loud knock on her door again. Startled, she opened up to see Lydia. "Dinner will be served at 9, but if you're up late, feel welcome to take what you need from the kitchen." She wanted to have dinner by herself, so she intentionally stayed up a little late so she could make her own. Around 10, she slowly slipped into the kitchen and checked the fridge. Bread, eggs, cheese. As she was preparing her sandwiches, however, she suddenly heard a noise behind her. To the corner, Lydia's brother stood, staring at her again. Natasha quickly went on to make her sandwich when she noticed him coming near her. Can we talk? Excuse me? Can we talk?" he whispered again. Natasha looked at him awkwardly. "Can you come to my room?" No, sorry." Creeped out and a little scared, Natasha took her plate and hurried to her room. What was wrong with her brother? Mostly harmless? Right. Natasha planned to stay in. She had her food and skimmed through some of her seminar papers, but a couple hours later, she had to go to the bathroom. Checking the halls, Natasha walked out as silently as she could. "Natasha, it's a good thing you came out. I didn't want to bother you again." Natasha flinched, turning around to see Lydia behind her. "It totally slipped my mind. You know how it is taking care of the baby all on your own. Do you need any amenities? A toothbrush, clothes?" "No, that's all right." Lydia quickly opened one of the rooms. "I usually keep this room open to my guests. I have a collection of clothes and shoes. You're welcome to use them." Natasha looked inside to see tons of clothes and shoes, some that didn't even look like they fit Lydia. How much shopping did this woman do?
Wow, it's like a mini store. Oh, it's just a hobby of collecting, you know. Lydia suddenly took hold of Natasha's necklace. This is really pretty. Where did you buy it? It's actually a family heirloom. Oh, be careful with it. After relieving herself, Natasha returned to her room. Finally, she could sleep. Who knew she would get stuck with such weird people? The next morning, Natasha got ready for her seminar, trying to look her best. However, through the event, she couldn't spot Richard. She tried calling him, but he didn't pick up either. After the event, she grabbed a coffee at a nearby shop and tried calling Richard again. Hello? Richard, where were you? I didn't see you there. Something urgent came up, I couldn't make it. So, when can we meet? Natasha, I'm really busy right now, I'll let you know. Before Natasha could ask anything more, Richard disconnected the line. She was hoping they would spend the day together, but now she was all alone. Quite disappointed, she strolled around the city, did a little shopping, and returned to the house that afternoon. As she got off the taxi, the first thing she spotted was Lydia peeking at her behind one of her curtains. Wow. As soon as Natasha got inside, she greeted her from the living room, where she was rocking her baby in the stroller. It's a good thing you're back early. So where were you today? Excuse me? Oh, I know, it's personal, but I love to hear about it. I don't really get to go out much, you know, with the baby and all. Yeah, it's alright. I was just around some stores. Come on, sit down. Would you like some coffee? No, it's fine. Natasha wanted to return to her room, but as Lydia looked at her, she didn't want to refuse and come off as rude. Maybe she was lonely and just wanted some company. You left quite early this morning. Your seminar ended at 12, didn't it? It's almost 4 now. Natasha looked at Lydia. How did she know about the seminar? Or more surprisingly, how did she know when it ended? Yeah, I was hoping to meet a friend afterwards. Friend or boyfriend? It's complicated. Oh, I'm open to talking about it. It's just that he's actually married. We first met earlier this year when he came to my city, and we hit it off great, but I thought it would be a one-night stand. Over the months, we kept contact and our friendship sort of turned into a relationship. He's not happy about his wife. I thought they would separate soon, but I'm not so sure. Today we were supposed to meet, but he couldn't make it. Lydia shook her head. Oh men, the world would have been a much better place if there were only women. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Natasha chuckled. After chatting with Lydia for a while, Natasha was actually feeling a bit better. That night, she had her dinner and fell asleep quite fast. It was sometime into the night, however, she woke up hearing a clicking noise. She got out of bed realizing someone was turning her doorknob. She slowly tiptoed towards the door and peeked through the space below. Her heart raced as she caught a glimpse of Lydia's brother's shoes. Are you awake? Natasha froze. He knew she was here, but she kept silent, holding her breath. Open the door. I just want to talk. Open the door. Natasha stood there anxiously, waiting for the man to leave. It took a while, but she eventually heard his footsteps walk off. She sat back down on the bed, feeling so unnerved.
If she was going to stay here, things couldn't go on like this. He was even watching her earlier this afternoon. The sooner she complained to Lydia, the better. So, a while later, Natasha sneaked out and went to her room. Lydia? As Natasha called out, she found the door slightly opened. Lydia, are you there? But the room was empty. The bed had been slept in. Perhaps Lydia had gone to the nursery. Natasha looked around, not sure whether she should wait here, when she noticed a baby monitor on her nightstand. She picked it up to see the footage. When she became confused by what she saw. This is my room. All this time, she had thought her brother was a creep, but Lydia turned out no less. Natasha turned to leave immediately, but she froze seeing Lydia behind her. You've been watching me? A smile spread across Lydia's lips as she took out a kitchen knife from behind her. No woman, no cry. Three years ago, Lydia Simmons was living in this house with her husband Jack. Jack rented out the house on BII Airbnb, and the couple made a good amount of money and were well-to-do. 2 years into their marriage, Lydia found out she was expecting, and she was happy to start a family with Jack. But it was some time into her pregnancy, she found out Jack had been cheating on her. I'll be home late, have work at the office, don't wait for me. Lydia was devastated knowing Jack's secret. And the more she got to know about his affair, the more she was losing her mind. Jack had been seeing a young woman, probably in her early 20s. At first, Lydia thought it was a fling. Because of her condition, she was unable to be there for him like before, so Jack was enjoying himself. But this didn't change the fact that she was his wife, right? So Lydia didn't confront him and continued on with their relationship as if everything was fine. But it was one day that Jack confronted her. Lydia, we need to talk. About what? Things just aren't working between us. And considering everything, I think it's best we separate before the child is born. That day, in a fit of rage, Lydia attacked Jack when he was least expecting it and injured him fatally. And out of jealousy and revenge, she planned to take the life of his lover as well. My wife isn't home. Come over. Where is he? You? That night, the young woman put on a fight. But Lydia took her life in cold blood. However, she had been injured in the process, and soon a tremendous pain began in her stomach. So Lydia called her brother. Leonard, I need help. When Leonard arrived and saw everything, he was shocked. What have you done? That night, he took Lydia to the hospital and managed to cover everything else at home. However, Lydia had never been the same since. After what she suffered and what she had committed, she had lost her sanity. Leonard stayed with her as Lydia continued the BII Airbnb business. However, whenever she met anyone who reminded her of her trauma, she relived that night, taking their lives. As for Natasha, Leonard couldn't warn her in time. Hello, is Natasha here? Yes, you must be Richard. She's in her room. Come in. No woman, no cry.
Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting. It was late on a cold, rainy night in Cypress Hills, Queens, New York. The winds were howling, the sound of thunder rumbled in the air, and the streets were near empty. Jason was outside watching the dark, towering trees sway side to side. Every time the lightning flashed in the skies, he spotted a few birds sitting on the branches, taking shelter from the pouring rain. After walking a bit further, Jason finally spotted the bus stand up ahead. He rushed under the stand and finally sat down on a dry spot. Far on the opposite side of the road, there were some houses, but everyone had their lights turned off and the curtains drawn. As Jason waited for the bus, he stared at the rain drizzle down in the light of the street lamp up ahead. The traffic lights changed from green, yellow to red, and back again, but the last time a car had drove down the road was quite a while ago. Jason shivered as he put his hands into his pocket. He let out a sigh, watching the white puff of his breath flow out into the air. It was chilly, and considering this bus stand was on the highest point of this hilly road, there was quite a strong breeze here. When some time had gone by, Jason started to get impatient. He got up and started pacing around when suddenly he heard the sound of the bus far down on the road. Finally, the bus took a stop right in front of him and opened up. "Hop on in," the bus driver said. Jason hurried inside, relieved to be out of the cold winds and the rain. The bus was absolutely empty. "Guess we're going to be the last two tonight," Jason said as he counted 8 quarters in his hands. "Today's been a slow day. I feel like I've been driving this bus much longer than I'm supposed to." Jason dropped in the quarters in the fare machine and sat down in the front section of the bus as it pulled off again. "That makes the two of us. Sometimes it feels like time freezes." There's been an accident on the usual route this bus follows, so we were instructed to drive around on this different route. "But you're still gonna stop at Dorset Avenue, right?" "Yes, don't worry. We're still going to the final destination. There's been some damage from the accident, so this detour schedule is going to be in effect during the construction period. And the stops being used on this detour are normally closed, but they've been made active for the convenience of the temporary use." I know, I actually saw the notice, but finding my way to this bus stand was one long walk. Jason peered out the window, watching the raindrops stain the glass. The steam that had collected made it difficult to see, but Jason could make out the houses and streetlights passing by. He looked out the front window of the bus as the driver halted at the next stop. More passengers at this time of the night? Jason was quite surprised to see a young woman standing outside in the rain. He checked his watch. It was 1:18 a.m. She must have gotten caught up with the transport issues as well. Looks like everyone was in trouble tonight. As the bus door slowly opened up, the young woman hurried inside. Her hair was dripping water and her dress was soaked, but she still had a smile on her face. "It's pouring cats and dogs tonight," she said, letting out a deep breath and taking out her Metro card. She slipped her card into the machine, but it suddenly beeped out, rejecting it. "Oh no, I'm out of balance." "You can also pay in coins." "That's the problem, mister. I don't think I have quarters on me," she said worriedly, searching her purse. "This bus stand is usually closed. There weren't any vending machines around here for me to refill my card." "Well, if you want to ride the bus, you have to pay the fare." The young woman sighed as she took out a bill. "Maybe this will do. I have a Mr. Lincoln." Jason watched as the bus driver took the $5 bill and stuffed it into his pocket. He wasn't supposed to be collecting fares for himself, but I guess not everybody followed the rules these days. The bus driver chuckled and he pressed on the accelerator. "You can go. Take a seat in the back." Jason watched as the young woman walked past him all the way towards the back of the bus. The smell of her perfume was quite strange. Jason had never smelled anything like it before. "Is it going to take a long time to get to the last stop?" "Trust me, I want to end this shift as much as you do, but in weather like this, and down this narrow path, it's going to take a while to drive this bus through here." Jason tapped his feet as the minutes ticked by. He occasionally passed a glance at the young woman and had caught her looking back at him once. Seeing her smile at him, he smiled back. Was that supposed to be a signal? Should he go and start a conversation? Would she think he's weird? Well, there was no harm in being nice. The young woman was beautiful, and she seemed like a nice person. Even soaked and probably shivering in this cold weather, she still looked happy. Jason got up and walked to the back. He might as well pass the time till his stop came. "Hey, I'm Jason. Would you mind if I sit?" "Hi. Sure, I'm Victoria." "That's a nice name. The bus has been a mess today, hasn't it?" "Yeah, I've been waiting for a long time." "Tell me about it. I actually don't live too far, but looks like tonight we'll have to drive around the whole neighborhood just to get home. Sometimes a little adventure always makes life worthwhile," Victoria said, taking out an umbrella from her bag. "I love getting wet in the rain." "Wow, you look like you know how to make every gloomy, messy situation into a happy and beautiful one, don't you?" Victoria passed Jason a glance, letting out a chuckle. "Yeah, well, sometimes not every smile means you're happy, and not every tear means you're upset." "You got that right, but there's something about you. You seem genuine. Before you stepped in, I was feeling a little gloomy and cranky myself. And now? Perhaps now this night will be one I'll remember. Where are you headed to? We can get some coffee together in this rain. I think I know a coffee shop nearby." "I would love to, Jason, but I'm so sorry. I have somewhere I need to be, and my stop is here." "Here?" Jason said, confused. He turned to look outside. They weren't anywhere near the next stop. Ouch, was she just trying to put him off like that? "The next stop isn't here yet," Jason pointed out. But when he turned to look next to him, he was startled to find the seat empty. He turned around. He was all alone in the bus. Jason stood up and walked down the aisle. Where did she go? How could someone just vanish like that? Jason was bewildered. He sat down just staring at the back of the bus. But the more he remembered the girl, her wet hair, her smile, the small designs on her dress, sitting next to her and speaking to her, the more he was getting freaked out about what happened. Had he been speaking to someone, or was it a dream? This vivid? After a while of sitting there in confusion, Jason walked to the bus driver and casually asked, "Hey, that girl in the dress, she got on the bus, right?" "Yeah, why? What's the problem? Did she get off already?" The bus driver looked at Jason and took a glance back, furrowing his brows. How can she get off when I didn't even stop the bus? But she's not here. There's only the two of us on this bus right now. The bus driver suddenly halted the bus and got off his seat. What? I was starting to think I was dreaming or hallucinating, but you saw her too. I knew she was here. I was speaking to her, and it was like she suddenly disappeared. We can't both hallucinate the same thing. Hold on a minute. The bus driver put his hands into his shirt pocket. She handed me a bill because she didn't have the fare. The bus driver took out what the young woman had given him. But as he pulled it out of his pocket, the look on his face changed. It didn't feel like a bill. Jason and the bus driver stared at a shriveled up, dried, bony finger in his palm. Why do you have that in your pocket? It was her. That girl, she gave it to me. Jason stepped back in fear as the driver threw down the lone, cut finger. They both stared at the bone laying on the ground, horrified by what they experienced. Who was she? Or what was she? Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.